I shouldn't be talking about this. I know that's a cliche way to start one of these stories, but I mean it. If this video disappears, or if the audio cuts out halfway through, or if you suddenly get that weird feeling like you're being watched while listening, just know I tried to tell it anyway. There are rules. That's the simplest way I can explain it without getting ahead of myself. Rules that don't get written down. Rules no one officially tells you. Rules you just understand eventually, usually when it's already too late. And I broke one. Actually, that's not true. I broke more than one. But there's a particular rule about talking, about sharing things that aren't meant to leave a certain place. I can feel it even now, like pressure behind my eyes, like something listening for the wrong words. Still, I'm going to keep talking. Because if I don't, then what happened just stays there. And trust me, that's worse. I worked as a school bus driver. High school route. Nothing special. If anything, it felt like a downgrade. You spend your mornings and afternoons transporting a bunch of hormonal, aggressive teenagers who think rules don't apply to them. Honestly, some days it felt less like driving a bus and more like escorting inmates. A rolling prison transport with worse language and sharper attitudes. That was the joke, at least. That's how I coped. Because before all of this, it was just a job. The route was always the same. Same cracked roads, same rusted street signs, same tired-looking houses that felt like they were leaning away from you as you drove past. After a while, you stop noticing the details. You just follow the path, pick up the kids, drop them off, collect your paycheck. That's the job. But this route, it never felt right. The high school sat just outside the center of Oddtown, if you can even call it a center. There wasn't much there to begin with. A gas station, a diner that always looked half-closed even during lunch hours, and a few scattered shops that never seemed to change ownership, no matter how empty they looked. You learn not to ask questions in Oddtown. That's not a rule anyone tells you. It's just something you pick up on. The way people pause half a second too long before answering. The way conversations die the moment you walk into a room. The way everyone seems aware of something they refuse to acknowledge. And the kids, they were worse. I've dealt with difficult students before, every driver has, but this wasn't normal teenage attitude. This was something else. Fights broke out over nothing. Real fights, blood, teeth, sometimes knives. I had a kid once pull a blade on another because he looked at him wrong. And no one reacted the way they should have. No panic, no shock, just irritation, like it was an inconvenience more than anything else, like violence was part of the routine. After a while, I stopped intervening unless I absolutely had to. You learn that too. Keep your head down, keep the route moving, don't get involved. Emotional detachment becomes survival. I'd sit there behind the wheel, listening to the chaos behind me, staring out at those empty streets, and thinking the same thing over and over again. Everyone knows something's wrong here. No one says it. And I didn't either, not for 2 years. Because as long as the bus kept moving, I could pretend it was just a job. Then one morning, they went quiet. The first ones I noticed were the siblings. Everyone on that route knew them. You could not know them. Older brother, younger sister, both of them constant problems. Loud, aggressive, always starting something before the bus had even pulled away from the curb. I'd had to stop the vehicle more than once just to break up whatever they'd started that morning. So when they got on and didn't say a word, I noticed. Not just quiet, not sulking, not tired, not distracted by their phones. This was different. They walked up the steps in single file, slow and deliberate, like they were following instructions I couldn't hear. No shoving, no insults, no eye-rolling. They didn't even glance at the other students. Just moved past them, one after the other, and took their seats halfway down the bus. And then they sat, perfectly still. No fidgeting, no whispering, no tapping their feet or kicking the seat in front of them like they usually did, just still. I checked the mirror. At first I thought maybe something had happened. A fight before pickup maybe, some kind of punishment. Kids can go quiet when they're in trouble. That made sense. That was normal. But then I saw their faces. They weren't looking at each other. They were looking at me. Both of them. Through the mirror. Unblinking. There's something about being watched while you're driving that puts a knot in your stomach. You feel it immediately. Your hands tighten on the wheel, your focus slips just enough to make you aware of it. I told myself to ignore it. Kids stare sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. But this, it felt like it meant something. Their expressions were completely blank. No anger, no boredom, no emotion at all. Just observation. Like I was the interesting thing on the bus for once. Silence is worse than screaming. At least with noise, you know what you're dealing with. You can react to it. You can understand it. This was nothing, and somehow that made it worse. I kept checking the mirror every few seconds, telling myself I was overthinking it, that they were just having an off morning, that maybe they were sick or tired or finally growing out of their usual behavior. Anything that made sense. Anything normal. But they didn't move, didn't blink, just watched me. And after a while, I stopped looking back, not because I wasn't curious, but because I didn't want to see if they were still doing it. At first, I thought it was just them. The next stop filled the bus with noise again. A group of juniors piled in like they always did, loud, obnoxious, already arguing before they'd even made it up the steps. One of them shoved past another, knocking his shoulder hard enough to start something. "Watch it, man. You watch it. Say that again." Or what? There it was, familiar, predictable, normal. I actually felt my shoulders loosen a little as the noise spread through the bus. Laughter, insults, someone blasting music from their phone, someone else yelling at them to turn it off. A girl complained about a test, another about a teacher, and within seconds the whole thing turned into overlapping conversations that didn't make any sense if you tried to follow them. It was chaos. And I wanted it, I needed it. After those first few minutes of silence, this felt like proof that I'd been overthinking things. That whatever weird mood the siblings were in, it wasn't contagious. It wasn't important. Just another strange morning in a town full of strange mornings. I kept my eyes on the road, letting the noise wash over me. It grounded me, made everything feel real again. But then, I checked the mirror. They hadn't moved. Not an inch. Half the bus was in motion. Kids turning, leaning into the aisle, throwing things, gesturing wildly as they talked. But right in the middle of it, those two sat like statues. Still watching me. Not reacting to the noise. Not even acknowledging the chaos around them. It was like the rest of the bus didn't exist to them. "They're being weird again," someone muttered from the back, just loud enough for others to hear. "Yeah, what's wrong with you too?" another voice called out. No response. "Hey, I'm talking to you." A pause. Then laughter, dismissive, uneasy. "Whatever, freaks." The attention shifted. It always does. Teenagers lose interest fast. Within seconds, they were back to arguing about something else, louder than before, like they were trying to drown out the moment that had just happened. But I couldn't shake it. Because even as the noise filled the bus again, those two didn't react, didn't blink, didn't stop watching me. I found myself gripping the wheel tighter, glancing up at the mirror more often than I should have. Every time I looked, it was the same posture, same empty expressions, same unbroken eye contact. The noise didn't fix it. If anything, it made it worse. Because now it felt like something was hiding inside all that chaos. Something quiet, something patient. waiting. And then someone made the mistake. It was a kid named Darren. Loudmouth class clown type. The kind who couldn't stand being ignored. If there was silence, he filled it. If there was tension, he poked at it until something snapped. So of course, he noticed them. He leaned out into the aisle, twisting in his seat so he could get a better look at the siblings. "Yo," he called out, half laughing, half annoyed. "What's your problem today?" No response. "Seriously, what is this? You guys on meds or something?" A few snickers came from the back. Someone told him to shut up. Someone else encouraged him. Typical. Darren grinned, feeding off it. He stood up, grabbing the top of a seat to steady himself as the bus rolled forward. "Nah, I'm serious. This is creepy." He pointed at them. "You two look like you just saw a ghost or something." I glanced up at the mirror. They were still staring at me. Not him. Me. And for some reason, that made my stomach drop. "Hey," Darren said again, louder now, stepping closer into the aisle. "I'm talking to you." He was right next to them now, close enough that they couldn't ignore him, close enough that you can at least. He stopped. Mid-sentence. Just stopped. No stumble, no hesitation. 1 second he was talking, the next nothing. His mouth was still slightly open, like the rest of the sentence was stuck somewhere behind his teeth, waiting to come out. But it never did. The bus didn't go quiet immediately. It took a second, maybe two. The noise carried on just long enough for it to feel wrong when it finally faded. Conversations trailed off. Laughter died in people's throats. "What?" someone whispered. Darren straightened slowly. His posture changed first. Shoulders relaxing, spine going stiff in a way that didn't look comfortable. Then his head turned, not toward the other kids, not toward me. Toward the front. Toward the mirror. And then, toward me. His expression flattened, completely, like someone had wiped everything off his face and left nothing behind. No confusion, no fear, no personality. Just nothing. He moved past the siblings without another word and slid into the empty seat across from them. Sat down, hands in his lap, still. Watching me. A girl near the back laughed nervously. "Okay, what the hell was that?" No one answered. Because we were all looking at Darren now. And at them. 3 of them. Silent. Unmoving. Watching. It doesn't spread like a disease. That thought hit me hard and fast, like something clicking into place inside my head. Diseases take time, they show symptoms, they build. This didn't. It spreads like a conversation. You talk to them, and then you become one of them. I felt my throat go dry as I looked back at the road, hands tightening around the wheel again. The noise didn't come back this time. Not really. Just quiet murmurs, whispers that didn't carry. No one wanted to test it. No one wanted to be next. And that's when I made my first rule. I didn't say it out loud. Not at first. But the rule formed in my head, as clearly as if someone had whispered it directly into my ear. Don't talk to them. Simple, obvious, and somehow absolutely certain. I kept my eyes on the road, gripping the wheel tighter than I needed to, pretending everything was still normal, pretending I was still just doing my job, but in the mirror I could see them. 3 of them now. Then 4. It happened again at the next stop. A girl got on, already mid-conversation with someone behind her, laughing about something I couldn't quite make out. She walked halfway down the aisle, saw them and paused, just for a second. "What's with you, goo?" She stopped. Same as Darren, same frozen moment, same unnatural silence swallowing the rest of her words. Then the turn, the posture, the empty face. And then she joined them. Sat down. Watched me. No hesitation, no confusion, just compliance. It spread faster after that. Not everyone talked to them directly. Some just got too close, said something in passing, tried to joke about it, tried to break the tension. Every time, the same result. Mid-sentence silence, then stillness, then that slow, deliberate turn toward the front of the bus. Toward me. By the time we were halfway through the route, nearly a third of the bus had gone quiet. The noise was dying in patches, like something was eating it piece by piece. Conversations would start, then falter as people noticed what was happening around them. No one wanted to be next, but they kept slipping. Humans don't handle silence well. We fill it instinctively, even when we shouldn't. Especially when we shouldn't. I could feel it building, that pressure, that urge to say something, anything, just to break the tension. And then I realized something worse. They wanted that. Every time someone spoke near them, it felt encouraged, like the silence wasn't passive, like it was waiting, like it needed a response. They wanted me to talk. The thought came uninvited, and once it was there, I couldn't shake it. Because they weren't just staring anymore. They were focused. All of them. Every single one that had turned their eyes locked onto me through the mirror. Not wandering, not distracted, just fixed. Unblinking. Patient. Like they were waiting for permission. My mouth felt dry. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe slowly, evenly. If this thing spread through talking, then I couldn't risk it. Not even to calm them down. Not even to tell them to sit or be quiet or behave. Nothing. I drove in silence. And behind me, the silence grew. But it wasn't empty. It was full of them. Watching. Pressing in on me without moving an inch. It stopped being about physical danger after that. No one was fighting. No one was pulling knives. No one was even raising their voice. And somehow that made it worse. Because this wasn't something I could react to. I couldn't defend against it. I couldn't even understand it. All I knew was the rule. Don't talk to them. And as long as I followed it, I might be okay. Might. I should have warned them. But I didn't. I should have said something. That thought sat heavy in my chest as the bus rolled forward, stop after stop, more kids getting on, more chances for it to spread. I could have warned them, could have shouted it out, told them to stay quiet, to keep their distance, to not engage. But every time the idea came up, I stopped myself. Because warning them meant talking. And talking meant risk. I didn't know if it worked both ways. I didn't know if speaking about them counted the same as speaking to them. I didn't know anything for certain, except what I'd already seen. People who talked changed. So I stayed quiet. And I told myself it was the smart decision. That I was protecting myself. That there was nothing I could really do anyway. It's easy to justify things when you're scared. The bus felt different now, heavier, not physically but atmospherically, like the air itself had thickened, pressing down on everything. Conversations were quieter, shorter. People leaned toward each other instead of speaking out loud. Even the troublemakers had toned it down, like some instinct deep inside them was starting to catch on. But instinct isn't enough. Not when denial is louder. His name was Michael. I didn't know him well, but I'd seen him enough times to recognize him as one of the quieter kids. Not shy exactly, just observant. The kind who watches before acting. He stood up slowly from his seat near the back, gripping the top rail as the bus moved. His eyes flicked from one silent student to another, then up toward the mirror, toward me. And I saw it. Understanding. It hit him all at once. I could tell by the way his posture changed, the way his breathing seemed to steady instead of panic. He wasn't guessing anymore. He knew. He figured it out too late. Don't, Michael said suddenly. his voice cutting through the bus sharper than anything that had been said all morning. Every head turned toward him. "Don't talk to them," he continued, louder now, urgency creeping into his tone. "Whatever you do, just don't." Someone laughed. "Dude, what are you talking about?" "I'm serious," Michael snapped, pointing toward the silent group. "Look at them, something's wrong. If you talk to them, you—" "Yeah, no kidding, something's wrong," another kid interrupted. "They're being weird, so what?" "It's not just weird." But they weren't listening. A few kids rolled their eyes. Others exchanged looks, half amused, half annoyed. To them, it sounded like paranoia, like overreaction, like a joke that wasn't landing. Michael's voice wavered for a second, and I could see the doubt creeping in. That moment where you start questioning yourself because no one else is taking it seriously. That moment is all it takes. Because if no one believes you, then no one changes their behavior. And if no one changes, someone makes a mistake. The tension built slowly after that. You could feel it in the silence between conversations, in the way people avoided looking directly at the ones who had turned. The bus wasn't loud anymore, but it wasn't quiet either. It was waiting. Waiting for someone to prove Michael wrong. Or right. He sat back down eventually, shaking his head, muttering under his breath. No one followed his advice. Not really. They just hesitated more, talked a little less. But they still talked. Because people always think the rules don't apply to them. And then someone took it a step further. And then someone touched them. Her name was Jennifer. She wasn't stupid. That's the worst part. I'd seen her earlier, sitting a few rows back, whispering with another girl. She'd heard Michael. Everyone had. And unlike most of them, she actually seemed to take it seriously. She kept her distance, avoided eye contact, didn't say a word in their direction. For a while, it looked like she understood the rule. Don't talk to them. And it worked. She didn't change. Didn't go silent. Didn't turn. So for a moment, just a moment, I thought maybe that was enough. That as long as you didn't speak to them, you were safe. I wanted that to be true. But fear doesn't just make people cautious. Sometimes it makes them curious. The bus slowed as we approached another stop, and Jennifer stood up from her seat, gripping the backrest in front of her. She hesitated, glancing toward the cluster of silent students in the middle aisle. They were still watching. Always watching. Just ignore them, someone whispered behind her. I am, she whispered back. And she meant it. But when the bus jerked slightly as I braked, she lost her balance. Just a little, enough that her hand shot out instinctively to steady herself. Enough that her fingers brushed against Alicia's shoulder. Alicia had been one of the first to turn. She'd been sitting there perfectly still, eyes locked forward. Until Jennifer touched her. What happened next didn't make sense. Not in any way my brain could process cleanly. Alicia moved fast, faster than anything I'd seen all morning. 1 second she was sitting, the next she was on her feet, turning toward Jennifer with a suddenness that snapped every head in her direction. Jennifer barely had time to react. Wait, I didn't mean. Alicia grabbed her. Not violently, not like a fight, it was almost controlled, deliberate. And then she opened her mouth. Too wide. Far too wide. Her jaw stretched in a way that shouldn't have been possible, skin pulling tight, lips splitting at the corners as her mouth expanded into something that didn't belong on a human face. Someone screamed. Jennifer tried to pull back, but Alicia's grip didn't loosen. It tightened, anchored her in place. And then, she didn't bite, she swallowed. There's no other way to describe it. Alicia leaned forward, and Jennifer's head disappeared into her mouth like it was being pulled into something soft, something elastic. There was no tearing, no blood at first, Just this horrible, smooth motion, as if Jennifer was being fed into something that could stretch endlessly to accommodate her. The screaming got louder. People scrambled back, climbing over seats, shoving past each other to get away. But there was nowhere to go. The aisle was blocked. The exits were closed. I couldn't move. I just stared at the mirror. Jennifer's body kept going. Shoulders, arms, torso, sliding into Alicia with that same impossible ease. Like watching a snake swallow something twice its size, except worse, because this wasn't an animal. This was a person. Or it had been. There was a wet, suffocating sound as the last of Jennifer disappeared, her legs kicking weakly before vanishing completely. Alicia's body didn't change, didn't bulge or distort. It just accepted her. And then she sat back down, mouth closing, face returning to normal, like nothing had happened. The bus erupted into chaos. Screaming, crying, people shouting over each other, some trying to push forward, others trying to force the windows open. Pure panic, raw and uncontrolled. But in the middle of it all, the silent ones didn't move, didn't react. They just watched me. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't random. This wasn't chaos. This had structure. This had rules. And that's when I understood this had rules. The second rule came easier than the first. Don't touch them. I didn't need time to think about it. I didn't need to rationalize it or test it. I just watched a girl disappear, swallowed whole, because of a single, accidental brush of skin. That was enough. My hands tightened on the wheel as the chaos behind me spiraled out of control. Kids were screaming, crying, trying to force their way toward the front, toward me, like I had some kind of answer, like I could fix this. Open the door, someone shouted. Let us off. Please, please, just stop the bus. I didn't. I couldn't. Because stopping meant breaking routine. And something in the back of my mind, something I couldn't fully explain yet, told me that breaking routine was dangerous too. Everything felt like a rule now. Everything felt like a trap. Call me a coward. The thought came cold and sharp, cutting through the panic. Because I knew what I was doing. I was choosing not to help them. I was choosing to keep driving. A girl stumbled near the front, reaching out toward the railing beside my seat to steady herself. Her hand slipped, brushing against the sleeve of one of the silent ones standing too close to the aisle. I saw it happen in the mirror, saw the contact, saw the shift, and I looked away. I focused on the road like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. Like if I just kept the bus moving, kept my eyes forward, I could separate myself from what was happening behind me. Another scream. Another body dragged into that impossible, stretching mouth. I didn't turn around, didn't react, didn't intervene, because I already knew how it would end. The rules were clear now, brutally clear. Talk to them, you become them. Touch them, you get consumed. And anything that brought you closer to them was a risk I wasn't willing to take. Not anymore. The bus felt smaller with every passing minute, more crowded, more suffocating. The infected were spreading, filling seats, standing in the aisle, their eyes all fixed forward, fixed on me. Waiting, watching. I could feel the weight of their attention pressing against the back of my skull. And still the others kept begging. Please, help us. Do something. I didn't answer, because answering meant speaking. And speaking might be all it took. So I stayed silent. I drove, and I let them die behind me. Because at some point, survival stops being about doing the right thing. It becomes about doing anything that keeps you alive. And I chose to survive, even if it meant becoming the kind of person I used to hate. The kind who looks away. The kind who does nothing. The kind who lives while everyone else doesn't. The screaming didn't stop. But eventually, it didn't matter. Because something else was about to happen. Something worse. And it started with a voice. A voice that didn't come from behind me. A voice that didn't come from anywhere at all. Then they spoke to me. It didn't speak out loud. That's the part that broke something in me. Because at first I thought I was just imagining it. Stress, panic, sleep deprivation. Something my brain was doing to fill the silence I'd forced on myself. But then it came again. Clearer this time. Not from behind me, not from the kids, not from the bus itself. Inside my head. Stop at the next station. I almost reacted physically. My hands tightened on the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I glanced at the mirror instinctively, expecting to see someone speaking, someone moving their lips. But no one was. All of them were still. Watching. Did someone just... I started, then stopped myself. Speaking felt dangerous now. Even thinking about speaking felt dangerous. The voice didn't wait. You will not skip stops. My throat went dry. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a warning. It felt like a fact being inserted directly into my thoughts, like it had always been there, and I was only now noticing it. Another rule formed immediately after it. You will not leave the bus. That one hit harder. Because it wasn't about behavior anymore. It wasn't about interaction or contact or distance. It was about control. Total control. I tried to push back, tried to think something else, anything else. But it was like my thoughts weren't private anymore. Like they were being read before I even fully formed them. You're not real, I thought. The response came instantly. Neither are your choices. My stomach dropped. I looked out the windshield expecting to see something, anything, that explained what was happening. A person, a device, a signal, some physical source. But there was nothing. Just the road. Just the route I'd driven 100 times before. And the kids behind me, still sitting in unnatural silence, all turned toward the front like a single organism. Like they were listening too. Like they always had been. I realized something then that made my skin go cold. It wasn't just speaking to me. It had always been speaking. I was just finally hearing it. Stop at the next station. The command came again, firmer this time, like pressure building behind my eyes. I felt my body respond before my mind could resist. My foot eased off the accelerator slightly without me fully deciding to do it. No. I forced myself back. But it was harder than it should have been. Like my own body didn't fully belong to me anymore. You will comply. And beneath it, quieter, almost patient. You always have. The bus slowed as we approached the familiar turnoff, the school. I hadn't even realized how close we were until I saw the gates in the distance. And then I understood the final part of the rule. Don't leave the bus. Not because of danger outside, but because I was never supposed to be outside in the first place. And then we reached the school. The bus rolled to a stop in front of the school like it always did. Same cracked pavement, same dull morning light, same routine that should have felt normal but didn't anymore. Nothing about this felt normal anymore. The doors hissed open, and for a moment nobody moved. The silence inside the bus wasn't the same kind of silence from before. It wasn't empty. It was full. Full of eyes, full of waiting, full of that pressure behind my thoughts that never really left now. Then the first student stood up. Slowly, too slowly. He walked down the aisle without hesitation, stepping over bags, past frozen classmates, past the ones still pretending they didn't understand what was happening. But they all understood. They just didn't want to accept it. One by one, they started moving. Not running, not panicking, just complying. Like something inside them had already decided the outcome and their bodies were simply catching up. The infected ones were the first to leave. They didn't rush. They didn't look back. They just stepped off the bus and stood outside, turning their heads in unison toward the building like they were being called there. And then the uninfected followed. Some were crying now, quietly. Others were shaking. A few tried to hesitate at the door, but it didn't matter. The flow of movement carried them forward anyway. I stayed in my seat. I didn't get up, because I already knew what would happen if I did. The voice returned, calmer now, almost final. Drop them off. I swallowed hard. My grip on the steering wheel loosened slightly without me meaning it to. My body still wanted to follow instructions, even now, even after everything. Then the second rule followed, immediately after. You will never leave Oddtown. That name hit differently now. Not like a place, like a sentence, like a boundary I'd been inside my entire life, without realizing it. The kids were almost all off the bus now. The last few hesitated at the bottom of the steps, looking around like they expected someone to tell them this was a mistake, that they were being sent back, that it would all reset. But nothing reset. Nothing ever reset. The doors stayed open a little longer than they should have, just long enough for me to realize something important. This wasn't a stop. It was a cycle, a loop. They weren't being dropped off for the day. They were being returned to something, reinserted into something that required them to keep coming back. And so was I. None of us ever leave. The thought didn't feel like fear anymore. It felt like confirmation, like I had finally understood the shape of the thing I was inside. The doors closed. The bus sat still for a moment longer than necessary, waiting. And that's when I realized I wasn't the only one trapped. The moment the last of the students disappeared through the school gates, I finally noticed how wrong the rest of the world looked. Not just my bus, not just my kids. All of it. There were other buses lined up along the curb, perfectly spaced like someone had planned the formation down to the inch. Engines still running, doors still open. No movement from inside except the faint shifting of silhouettes behind glass. Other drivers. I remember thinking that word like it meant safety, like seeing them meant I wasn't alone in this. But then I saw their faces. One driver sat stiffly behind the wheel of the nearest bus, staring straight ahead, not blinking, not reacting. His hands were still on the steering wheel like he'd been frozen mid-decision. His mouth was slightly open, as if he'd been about to speak and simply stopped. The next bus was worse. A woman in uniform sat upright, but her head was tilted just slightly too far to the side. Not resting, not relaxed, like something had adjusted her angle and forgotten to finish the job. And then I realized something that made my stomach drop. They weren't looking at the school. They weren't looking at the kids. They weren't even looking at each other. They were all listening to the same thing. Whatever had been inside my bus hadn't stopped with mine. A cold pressure crawled through my skull, and for a moment I was sure I was going to hear it too. That voice, that thing that had started whispering rules into my thoughts like they belonged there. But nothing came. Only silence. Heavy, shared. Alive. That's when it hit me properly, not as fear but as understanding. We weren't drivers anymore. We were placeholders. Temporary holders of something that didn't belong to us. I stepped back from my bus slowly, like sudden movement might make me part of whatever was happening to them. My shoes hit the pavement too loudly, too real, like I didn't belong in that stillness. One of the drivers finally moved. Not to look at me. Not to escape, just to slightly turn his head toward the school gates, as if waiting for permission to continue existing. That was enough. I turned away, because I finally understood what the others hadn't dared to admit. If they were trapped too, then there was no help coming from them. So I went to find help. I didn't think before I moved. That was the only reason I kept walking toward the next bus, instead of turning around and pretending none of this had happened. The driver inside looked normal at first. Gray uniform, slight slouch, hands resting loosely near the wheel. The kind of tired posture you'd expect from someone doing the same route every day for years without complaint. For a second, I actually felt something close to relief. Another adult, another driver, someone who would understand what I was dealing with. I stepped closer and knocked on the glass. Once, twice. The door hissed open like it had been waiting for me the entire time. I climbed the steps slowly, already preparing the sentence in my head. Something simple, something calm. Are you seeing this too? Maybe even, we need to get out of here. But the words died before I could say them. He was looking right at me now. Not through me like the others. At me. And that was worse. His eyes were open too wide. Not dramatically, not cartoonishly, just wrong enough that my brain kept trying to correct them and failing. There was no recognition in his face, no confusion, no fear. Nothing, just attention, pure, unmoving attention. Hey, I started, and immediately hated how small my voice sounded. He didn't respond. Not a blink, not a twitch, not even the subtle shift of breathing that tells you someone is alive and listening. I took one step back, then another. That's when I noticed it. His mouth was slightly open, like he'd been about to speak for a very long time and simply never got the chance to finish the thought. And then very slowly, his head tilted. Not toward the bus controls, not toward the road, toward me, like an animal deciding whether I was worth understanding. My skin went cold in an instant. That familiar pressure started building behind my eyes again, like something on the other side of my thoughts had noticed me noticing it. I didn't wait for it to finish, whatever it was about to do. I turned and ran. Down the steps, across the pavement, away from the bus that suddenly felt less like transport and more like a container for something that was learning how to wear a human shape. I didn't look back, because I already knew what I'd see if I did. He wouldn't be confused. He wouldn't be chasing me. He would just be watching, still trying to understand why I left. That's when I found someone who was. I found her on the third bus. I almost didn't go inside. After what I'd just seen, after what the last driver had become, every instinct I had was screaming at me to stop looking for answers and just start running in the opposite direction. But then I heard it. A voice. Real human, shaky but real. Don't just stand there. Get in before they notice you're alone. I froze for half a second because the tone wasn't infected. It wasn't empty. It had weight to it, like whoever said it was still trying to convince themselves they were in control. Then the doors hissed open. I stepped inside fast and saw her. She was sitting in the driver's seat, but not in that frozen, lifeless way the others had been. She was tense, alive in the worst possible way, like she'd been holding her breath for too long and wasn't sure if it was safe to let it out. Her uniform was the same as mine, but slightly disheveled, a badge tilted off-center, hair pulled back too tightly. Like she'd been doing it over and over again, just to keep her hands busy. Her eyes locked onto mine immediately, and didn't let go. For a moment, neither of us spoke, because we both knew what the other was. Still human, still here. Finally, she exhaled. You're not one of them, she said carefully. I shook my head once. Neither are you. That was all it took for something to break loose between us. Not relief exactly, not safety, something closer to recognition, like two people realizing they were the last ones left in a room that was still filling with smoke. I'm Beatrice, she said after a pause. Route 247. Conrad, I replied. Route 125. She let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course they gave us numbers instead of names. That landed too well, too accurately. I looked past her into the empty seats behind us. No kids, no movement, just stillness that felt temporary, like it was waiting for permission to become something worse. How long? I asked. She understood immediately. 4 years, she said. I thought it was just this place. The town, the kids, the job. I nodded slowly, same. A silence stretched between us, but it wasn't the same kind as before. This one wasn't empty. It was full of shared damage. And something else. Realization. We weren't chosen today, she said quietly. I looked at her. She didn't smile when she said it. That was the worst part. We were chosen a long time ago, she continued, before we even noticed anything was wrong. My throat tightened. You think this has been building? I don't think, she said. I know. Outside, one of the other buses shifted slightly in the wind, metal creaking like a living thing pretending not to breathe. We both saw it. Neither of us commented. Instead, I sat down across from her, and for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel like I was alone in it. So I said quietly, we list the rules. And that was the moment everything started getting worse in a way we could finally understand. We wrote the rules down on the floor of the bus. Not metaphorically, literally. Beatrice found an old marker from the glove compartment, and I started speaking while she wrote, like if we didn't give the thoughts a physical shape, they might slip back into our heads and rot there. Rule 1 was obvious by now. Don't talk to them. Rule 2 came next, heavier than the first. Don't touch them. Then Rule 3. Don't skip stops. Rule 4. Don't leave the bus. We both paused at that one. Because it wasn't just a rule, it felt like a sentence. Rule 5 was worse, because it sounded harmless until you understood it was. Drop them off at school. And then we looked at each other for a long time before writing the last one. Rule 6. Never leave Oddtown. The marker stopped moving after that. Beatrice didn't even pretend she was going to add anything else. There was nothing else to say. Everything we needed to survive was already written, and everything we feared was already implied. She leaned back against the driver's seat. So that's it, she said quietly. That's the system. I stared at the list. It's not a system, I replied. It's control. Beatrice let out a slow breath. Same thing. That wasn't true, not really, but I didn't argue. Because something about the rules bothered me more than the rules themselves. They were specific. Too specific. Like someone or something had tested them. Over and over. Until they worked. I pointed at the last one. This is the anchor. Everything else exists because of that. Beatrice nodded slowly. If we leave Oddtown. Something happens, I finished. But we don't know what, she said. That was the problem. We had rules without explanations, consequences without witnesses, and fear without a visible source. And yet everyone followed them. Even the ones who were no longer themselves. Beatrice tapped the marker against her palm. Rules only exist if something enforces them. I looked at her. She looked back. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both understood what that meant. Something was watching. Something was maintaining the structure. And we were just moving inside it. Obeying means survival, she said, but obedience is how it grows. I didn't like that sentence. Not because it was wrong, because it felt right in a way I couldn't argue with. So what do we do? I asked. Beatrice looked down at the list again. Then slowly, she added one more line underneath everything else. It wasn't a rule. It was a question. What happens if we break it? We both stared at it for a long moment. And that's when I said it. So we decided to test them. We weren't escaping anymore. That word felt wrong now. Too simple, too hopeful, like something people said when they still believed the world made sense. Beatrice didn't use it either. We called it what it was. An experiment. The infected driver was still sitting in the third bus when we found him again. Same blank stare, same unnatural stillness. Except now, after everything we'd seen, I couldn't look at him and pretend there was a person inside anymore. It was like looking at a mask someone had forgotten to remove. Careful, Beatrice muttered behind me. I know, I said, though I didn't. We boarded slowly. The doors hissed shut behind us, and the sound felt louder than it should have, like the bus was aware we were doing something we weren't supposed to. The driver didn't react, didn't even turn his head. That was the first thing that made my skin crawl. Beatrice stayed near the aisle while I approached him. What if it stops when it crosses the line? She asked quietly. Then we learn something, I replied. And if it does? I didn't answer that. Instead, I reached past him and took the keys. That's when he moved. Not fast, not violently. Just slightly. His head tilted toward me, like he was trying to remember something he'd forgotten how to say. And for a second, just a second, I almost stepped back. But Beatrice spoke before I could think. Don't engage, she said sharply. That snapped me out of it. We forced him into the passenger area. No resistance, no struggle, just that same distant awareness, like whatever was inside him didn't care what we did as long as we stayed within certain boundaries. Then we started the bus. The engine turned over too easily, like it was waiting for this. We drove toward the edge of Oddtown. Neither of us spoke much. There wasn't anything left to say. The road ahead looked normal, almost peaceful, but every meter we covered felt heavier than the last. Beatrice kept watching the driver in the mirror. He knows, she whispered. No, I said. He doesn't know, he just reacts. To what? I gripped the wheel tighter. To the rules. The town limit sign appeared ahead. That ugly, simple marker that had never mattered before now felt like a wall between reality and something we still didn't understand. Beatrice leaned forward. If this works. I finished it for her. Then the rules are breakable. The bus rolled closer. Closer. And then we crossed the line. It didn't happen immediately. For a few seconds after we crossed the border, nothing changed at all. The road felt the same. The engine kept running. Even the silence inside the bus stayed intact, like the world was pretending nothing unusual had occurred. Then the infected driver screamed. Not out loud. Inside my head first. A sharp, tearing pressure slammed through my skull, like something trying to force its way out through my thoughts. Beatrice grabbed the dashboard, her face tightening in pain at the exact same moment. Conrad, she started. And then the smell hit. Smoke. Not from the engine. From him. The infected driver convulsed in his seat, jerking violently in a way that didn't look human anymore. His skin didn't burn like normal fire. It darkened too quickly, like something underneath him had finally been exposed to air it wasn't designed to survive in. He tried to stand. His legs gave out immediately. Beatrice turned away. Oh my God. I couldn't look away. Not because I wanted to. Because something in me, needed to understand what we were seeing. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Instead, there was that same wrong stillness, like even his scream had been denied permission to exist outside the town. And then it stopped. Just like that. No dramatic collapse, no final movement. Just absence. Where there had been something pretending to be a person, there was now nothing holding its shape together anymore. Beatrice exhaled shakily. It can't exist out here. I nodded slowly, my hands still locked on the wheel. The bus kept rolling forward, but it felt different now. Lighter, like whatever had been pressing down on reality inside Oddtown was no longer attached to us. We both stayed silent for a long time. Then Beatrice finally spoke. "So it's real." I glanced at her. "The boundary," she said. "It's not symbolic, it's not psychological, it's physical." I swallowed hard. The town was the cage. She looked back at the empty seat where the driver had been, and everything inside it. "Couldn't leave," I finished. For the first time since this started, the rules didn't feel like commandments. They felt like containment. Like someone had built a system not to protect us, but to keep something else in. Beatrice slowly straightened in her seat. Her voice was quieter now, sharper. "So we don't run from it," she said. I looked at her. We both understood what came next. "We use it." So we turned it into a weapon. We didn't speak for a while after that. The bus just kept rolling forward on its own momentum, like it didn't know whether it belonged inside Oddtown anymore or outside it. Beatrice kept staring out the window, jaw tight, thinking in that quiet, dangerous way she did when something was starting to make sense. Finally, she said it. "They need to be transported." I glanced at her. "The kids?" She nodded once. "All of them, the infected ones, the ones still inside." I didn't like where her thoughts were going, but I didn't stop her. Because I was already there too. The image came together too easily. The schools, the buses, the routine, the way everything revolved around us, driving them in and out every day like nothing unusual was happening. Except it wasn't transport. It was containment. Or worse, distribution. Beatrice leaned forward slightly, voice lowering. "We thought we were just drivers." I let out a short breath. "We're ferrymen." The word felt wrong the moment I said it. Like it had been waiting to be remembered. Beatrice didn't correct me. That was the worst part. She agreed. "They don't leave on their own," she said. "They don't move unless we move them." I thought back to the silent kids, the way they stood, the way they waited, the way everything started only after interaction. "They're anchored," I muttered. "To the system," Beatrice finished. We both looked at the empty driver's seat again. The realization settled in slowly, like something heavy dropping into place. "They needed us," I said quietly. Beatrice nodded, "Not just to drive them. To keep them inside," I added. The silence between us changed after that. It wasn't fear anymore. It was structure, understanding, something cold and logical replacing panic. If the drivers were removed, the system would fail. If the system failed, then whatever was inside Oddtown would no longer be contained. Beatrice sat back, exhaling through her nose. "So what happens if we reverse it?" I looked at her, then at the road ahead. And I said it without thinking too long about what it meant. All we had to do, I paused, was drive. We should have seen it coming sooner. The moment the school bell rang that afternoon, it felt like the entire town inhaled at once. Beatrice and I were already parked, engines idling, doors open like we were waiting for something we didn't fully understand yet, but had agreed to anyway. And then they came. At first it looked normal. Kids spilling out of the school gates in waves, some laughing too loudly, some pushing each other, some dragging their feet like they didn't want to go home yet. For a second, I almost forgot. Almost. Then I saw their eyes. The ones that didn't blink at the chaos. The ones that didn't react to anything at all. Beatrice saw them too. Her grip tightened on the wheel. "Conrad." "I see it," I said quietly. The infected ones weren't separate anymore. They weren't hiding in corners or sitting still in isolation. They were mixed in, spread out, like it had learned how to move properly. And they were all heading toward us. Not running, not rushing, just walking in that same controlled, patient way, like they already knew exactly where they were supposed to go. One by one, buses filled. Doors hissed open, seats creaked, footsteps echoed up metal steps. No hesitation, no resistance. Even the ones who should have been scared weren't. I watched a boy I recognized from earlier days step onto my bus, look straight at me and sit down without a word. No fear, no curiosity, just compliance. Beatrice's bus filled the same way. Through the side mirror, I saw her staring at the rows of children like she was counting something that didn't make sense anymore. "It's too many," she whispered. I didn't answer, because she was right. Every single one of them got on. Not just the infected ones. All of them. Like the distinction didn't matter anymore. Like the line between what was normal and what wasn't had finally dissolved completely. And when the last seat filled, something changed. Not outside. Inside. A pressure. Not sound, not voice. Recognition. Like whatever had been waiting behind all of this had finally noticed the pattern completing itself. Beatrice turned her head slowly toward me. Her face was pale. "It knows," she said. I swallowed. The buses sat there for a moment, engines running, full of children who didn't speak, didn't move, didn't question. And then, it realized. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was just pressure again. That familiar weight behind the eyes, like something pressing inward from the other side of thought. Beatrice flinched at the exact same moment I did, her hands tightening on the wheel so hard her knuckles went white. "Conrad," she whispered. I tried to respond, but my tongue felt heavy, wrong, like my own body was suddenly taking instructions from somewhere else. Then the pain arrived. Not sharp, not clean. Overwhelming. It felt like my skull was filling with sound that didn't exist. A ringing so deep it wasn't auditory anymore. It was structural. Like the world itself was vibrating in a key my body wasn't built to survive. Beatrice cried out. I saw her nose bleed first. Then mine. A thin, immediate line of red that made everything feel real in the worst possible way. "No," she gasped, pressing a hand to her temple. "No, no, no." The buses around us were still full. Still silent. Still waiting. And whatever had been behind all of this was no longer hiding the fact that it knew exactly what we were doing. The pressure sharpened. And then it spoke. Not words. Not language. Something closer to intent. A command that didn't need translation. "Stop." Beatrice jerked violently in her seat, like she'd been physically hit. "I can't," she started, then choked on the sentence. "It's in my head." So it was in mine too. But worse than that, it wasn't just presence anymore. It was resistance. Like something massive and unseen was trying to pull everything back into alignment. Back into rules. Beatrice suddenly slammed her door open. "Conrad, go," she shouted over the rising pressure. "We split now." I hesitated for half a second. That was all it took for the pain to spike again, sharp enough that I nearly blacked out. She didn't wait. She ran. Down the steps, across the road, Away from her bus, like staying inside, it meant becoming part of whatever was starting to collapse. I saw her stumble once, hands over her ears, blood trailing down her fingers. And then she was gone into the edge of the street chaos. The moment she left, the pressure shifted. Not gone. Focused. Like something had just picked a direction. My vision blurred at the edges. The children and the buses didn't move. But I could feel it now, something reacting. Something tightening. Not losing control. Panicking. The moment I tried to move the bus forward, I felt it change. Not the road, not the engine. Me. Something in the system snapped into focus again, like whatever had been panicking before had decided it wasn't going to lose without taking everything with it. My vision blurred at the edges. My ears rang so violently I thought I was going to collapse where I sat. And then Harry appeared. He wasn't supposed to be able to move like that. One moment he was just another silent kid on the bus, still, watching, folded into the same unnatural calm as the others. The next, he was in front of me, standing in the aisle, blocking the exit. His face was wrong in a way I still can't fully explain. Not monstrous, not distorted. Focused, like something inside him had finally decided I was the problem. "You can't," he said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It landed inside my head anyway. I gripped the wheel harder. "Get out of the way." He tilted his head slightly, like he was trying to understand why I would say something so meaningless. And then the bus crossed the border. There was no warning this time. No gradual shift. Just impact. The world outside the windshield flickered like reality had been torn and restitched in the wrong place. Harry screamed. Not with sound. With presence. The kind of scream that isn't heard so much as endured. Then fire erupted through him. Not just burning, erasing. The same thing we had seen before, but worse now. Faster, more absolute. Like the boundary wasn't just rejecting him, it was correcting an error. The children behind him began to react at once. Convulsing, collapsing. Burning in place without moving. Like the infection itself had finally been exposed to something it couldn't rewrite. I tried to stand. My body didn't respond properly. My legs gave out halfway down the steps. The heat hit next. Not external at first. Internal. Like my skull had been filled with boiling pressure and then told to stay intact. I saw Beatrice in flashes, somewhere outside, moving, shouting something I couldn't hear anymore. The bus kept rolling. Still forward. Still across the line. And I understood, in the clearest way I had ever understood anything in my life. This was the cost. The system didn't just allow escape. It demanded destruction in exchange. My hand slipped from the railing. My vision narrowed to black at the edges. And then silence. I woke up on the road. That was the first thing I understood, even before I understood anything else. Cold pavement under my back, bright, unnatural daylight pressing down on everything like nothing had ever gone wrong in this place. My body felt distant, disconnected, like I was borrowing it instead of living in it. People were around me, moving fast, talking, kneeling, hands on my shoulders. I couldn't hear a single thing. Not the sirens, not the shouting, not even my own breathing when I tried to force it out. Nothing. Just silence. Absolute, complete silence. I tried to sit up and someone guided me gently, like I might break if they moved too quickly. A face leaned into view, mouth moving, eyes wide with something between relief and disbelief. I didn't understand any of it. Then I saw her. Beatrice. She was further down the road, sitting against a barrier, her uniform torn, hair loose now, face streaked with dirt and exhaustion. But she was alive. When she saw me looking, she pushed herself up immediately and staggered toward me. Her mouth moved before she even reached me. I couldn't hear the words, but I understood them anyway. We made it out. That part was clear. Someone wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. Medics, maybe. I don't know. Everything felt like it was happening through glass now. I kept turning my head, trying to find the buses. The school. Oddtown. Anything. But there was only road. And smoke in the distance, where something had burned too thoroughly to still exist in the same way. Beatrice crouched in front of me, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to speak again. Slower this time, careful. I shook my head, pointed at my ears. She froze for a second, then nodded like she understood without needing confirmation. I couldn't hear anymore. That was permanent. That much I understood. But something else kept circling in my mind, louder than anything I couldn't hear anymore. The rules. The system. The way it reacted when we broke it. We didn't escape cleanly. We escaped forcibly. And that meant something survived the process of breaking. Something always does. Beatrice squeezed my shoulder once, like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. We made it out. But I still don't know. I'm writing this from a hospital bed. They told me I was lucky, that I should be grateful, that most people don't survive what I went through with their mind intact, let alone their body. They don't understand what intact even means anymore. I still can't hear anything. The silence isn't peaceful. It never becomes peaceful. It just sits there, constant, like something is still waiting for me to react to it. Beatrice visits sometimes. We don't talk the way we used to. We can't. Even when we try, it feels like the meaning gets lost halfway through the attempt. But she understands enough. We both do. Neither of us has agreed to go back. Not for reports, not for closure, not for answers. Because we both know what that place does to people who come too close to understanding it. And sometimes when I'm alone, I still think I hear it. Not the voice. The structure behind it. The rules don't feel gone. They feel displaced. Like they were never tied to the town itself, just temporarily anchored there. That's what keeps me from sleeping properly. So if you're hearing this, reading this, watching this somehow, pay attention. If you ever find yourself in a place where the rules feel too specific, too enforced, too consistent, don't test them. Don't question them. Just leave. Because the worst part isn't breaking them. It's realizing they were never meant to be broken by you in the first place. I escaped Oddtown. But I don't think Oddtown ever escaped me.